Hey guys, welcome back to the Beyond the Game podcast. My name is Jess Crowe and I'm joined here today by Chris Wood. Woody, nice to have you on the pod. How's it going?
Hey Jess, yeah, nice to see you again. Unlike often when we catch each other in the summer, I managed to see you at a few different tournaments across the winter, which was nice. But all good here, thank you. Nice, the sun is shining.
Great stuff, great stuff. It feels weird. We're both in the UK at the minute, which rarely happens. I feel like I'm just seeing you around the world. But look, today we're going to discuss your journey through cricket. But firstly, take me right back to the beginning. Was it always cricket for you?
Yeah, I guess so, in the sense that it was the only sport that I was any good at. I played a half decent level of football growing up, but when I got to the age of 15 and joined the Hampshire Academy, you obviously have to make a decision whether it's going to be cricket or football, and it was clearly no decision for me. I was very much semi-professional football. And cricket kicked off for me at about 15, really.
Great stuff. And now the big thing about cricket in the UK is obviously playing in your back garden as a kid through the English summers. What did those summers look like for you?
Yeah, so my dad played cricket. So from the age of 8, 9, I was in and around it every weekend. He played for a village team just outside Guildford, and I started playing subsequently off the back of that at the age of about 9 as well. So it was always in the summer, waiting for every Saturday to come round, go and watch Dad play, and then ultimately in the end he stopped playing to be able to chauffeur me around everywhere to get me playing more.
Excellent. And you've now had the opportunity to play cricket all around the world, as we mentioned, which we'll get more onto later on in the podcast. But is there anyone growing up that you took inspiration from as a player that you've now been able to share the field with?
To share the field with. It was not so much in the capacity as I would like, but obviously growing up around 2005 and that Ashes, a young 15-year-old lad that had just got on the Hampshire Academy, and I think the one point that really stepped out for me was Andrew Flintoff, and the way he went about his cricket. And I say not to share a field with in the capacity I would like, but as a young sort of 17-year-old, I was called in to do 12th man for Hampshire. As you do, and Hampshire were playing Lancashire at what was the Rose Bowl at the time, and he was playing. It would have been towards the back end of his career. So I guess to share the field with him in some capacity, it was great. But also he stopped playing due to the similar knee injury that I've had over the years. And for him to give me his time at PCA Awards evening one year as a young lad when he'd stopped playing, when I'd just gone through my first surgery, that was great for him to help me with that and give me some advice.
And did you have other cricketing heroes growing up?
I think with the Hampshire connection, I think naturally, I say naturally, you probably would anyway, but Shane Warne, he was on the staff and captain for Hampshire before I made it onto the staff. But, being around him and his presence in the academy, the way he went about his cricket and the never die attitude and never give up, I think he'd definitely be at the top of that tree.
And did he attempt you to go from the pacing world to maybe a spinner?
Absolutely not, especially the skill that I don't think would have lasted very long if I went down that route. An unbelievable art, and the skill behind bowling leg spin, as we all know, is incredibly tough.
And was it always bowling for you, or was batting ever on the cards as well?
Don't get me wrong, I absolutely loved batting. Growing up especially, it's only been the last I think when I stopped playing championship cricket, and the focus very much came around T20 cricket and trying to play the best I can for Hampshire, but get some exposure around the world as well. The batting slightly gets put to one side, and I'm not saying that's probably the right thing to do, but mixed in with a few knee surgeries. But while I was playing championship cricket, I absolutely loved it. You batted around 8 or 9 in the championship, and being able to contribute with both bat and ball, that does give you a sense of a bit more rounded feeling in the game that you can offer from both sides. As opposed now, I look on the other side, I might get 1 or 2 balls to bat at the end, but it's all about trying to make the impact with the ball.
To whack them both for 6. That's normally the plan.
I wish.
And sort of growing up seeing these players on TV as a pacer, are there any players that you sort of took inspiration from, aspects of their game that you now see implemented in your own game still today?
Yeah, definitely. I think one that I've watched closely over the years, although I probably wouldn't tell him to his face, is Trent Boult. And I was incredibly fortunate to play with him last year at Birmingham Phoenix in the 100. But somebody growing up and watching his craft in around Test cricket as well, but mainly for me as I transitioned into white ball, the way that he swinged the the new ball and was able to, bowl all phases of the game with high level of skill. He's certainly somebody as a left armer that I've watched closely. And like I said, last year, it was great to get a bit of insight from him, around bowling and what he does to make him tick, pre-game, etc. I just wish that conversation, could have happened 10 years ago.
Yeah. And now, look, you say 10 years ago, you've been at Hampshire pretty much your entire career, as you mentioned. But can you take us back to those first days, working your way up through the youth groups at Hampshire? What was that time like, and how exciting was it?
Yeah, it was amazing. I think you always look back with a sense of, a little bit of naivety in the moment when you're that young. It all sort of just comes to you day by day and season by season. But I was quite a late developer. I got into the academy at 15 and 16, as I mentioned, but I didn't actually get my first professional contract until I was 18. Often people will come straight out of the academy into a contract, but I had a year transition in the middle where I managed to get in the England 19s and then played for Hampshire. And I guess life is all about timings in a way. Hampshire were going through a little bit of a transition when the likes of me, Vincey and Dorse were all around 18, 19 years old. And they moved a couple of the senior players on, so they got relegated in the championship. So it exposed opportunity to come about and get first team cricket very early. And I always look back and, especially with my T20 hat on and the success that we've had as a club, but then also to be able to go and play in some franchises around the world. And I definitely hold that as, given that opportunity in amongst with some seriously good senior players from such a young age, to be able to go and just play and enjoy it. And we had, very fortunately, we won the T20 trophy in 2010 and I was 20 years old. So to get that so early, I guess that just breeds a little bit of confidence into your game.
Of course, and we'll talk more in depth about the success that you've seen with Hampshire later on. But look, in the dressing room as a youngster, playing in youth cricket, there's so many different characters. What were you like as a young player?
Very loud, very brash.
Everybody would never have thought that.
I think I never lacked confidence, which I think is a massive thing in professional sport, full stop. You've got to have something about you, whether it's a bit of aura, a bit of confidence in your ability to be able to get to where you get to. You often see quite a few players come through that are younger that they're not shy away, but they're that shy character and they find it hard to, to go out there and, face the fear and take the game on. And you often see a lot of professional cricketers kind of out the game by 26, 27, and I think that's because they potentially don't have that little something about them, whatever that is. Obviously it's different for everybody, but yeah, quite outspoken, quite brash, very confident.
Love it, love to see it. And now, as you mentioned earlier, you made your first class debut for Hampshire in 2010, actually taking a 5 for on debut with figures 5 for 54. How full circle was that for you from going, from playing in the youth groups to now making your debut and taking a 5 for on debut for Hampshire?
Yeah, as I said, it all happens very quickly. You're in the second team, and 1 minute you can feel a million miles away off from playing in the first team. And I often speak to a lot of young guys now that get that same feeling. And then 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, someone gets injured or whatever it might be, and you're exposed to it. I think one thing that was probably fortunate for me is, and you didn't mention it, I don't know if you're doing that out of niceties, it was actually against Oxford, so a uni team. So back then, we used to play a couple of first-class games against the uni. So to be able to be exposed as that as a little stepping stone to then go on and play against counties, it was probably a nice little introduction.
Definitely. And what was that time like for you, making your first class debut? Did you have those nerves, or were you pretty, as you say, you were a confident young player? Did you carry that confidence into your professional career as well?
Yeah, I think I probably carried it over. I've always liked the challenge of bat v ball. And, you're always going to get that sense of, those butterflies in your stomach, whether it's your first over in professional cricket or your last over in a T20 finals day. You're always going to have that. But something that's always sort of resonated with me and the feelings that I got is I always had those feelings. But when that moment that I was at the back of my mark, ready to bowl that coming over, they kind of dissipated. And then it was all down to, me and my execution and my ability to trust whatever I'd done previously to get me to where I got to was going to be enough to do the job. So yeah, just in that moment, just the competitive nature just comes through. And I guess all you want to do then is do the best you possibly can for your county.
It looks like you carried that competitive nature throughout the rest of your debut season, as you were Hampshire's leading T20 wicket taker. This is, of course, by design. It's intentional. And what did that preparation mentally and physically look like for you that season?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing in the two was, mentally. As I said, a lot of people moved on and we transitioned, and it was going to be apparent quite early that the likes of me, Vincey Dorse, Michael Bates at the time, Danny Briggs were going to get given opportunity. And it wasn't going to be a case of, we were going to play a game here or there. It was going to be, we're going to back these guys for the T20 season. And then you had the likes of Dimitri Mascarenhas, Simon Katic, Neil McKenzie, who worldwide names at the time. And you look back and you're playing with these guys. I think the physical side of it was relatively easy then. It's got a lot harder as I've got older. But I think when you're young and you're a natural athlete and you've played cricket since the age of 9, I think the physical part of it just falls into place naturally. It's actually how you deal with the failures so early on in your career. Because although you said there was lots of, I was leading wicket taker, there was also days where you feel incredibly exposed and you question whether you are good enough to be in that environment and playing professional cricket.
And was there anyone in particular, whether that be a coach or another player in the squad, that sort of made sure you were guided throughout that season?
Yeah, and I'd say Dominic Cork. He, not everybody's cup of tea, and I think he'd be fine with me saying that. But he was, one thing he absolutely did is he backed all the young guys like above and beyond, and he allowed you to make mistakes and come back from them. He gave you a specific role within the team that you got to stick by. It wasn't a case of you would bowl power play one game, then because you did it poorly, all of a sudden you bowl the middle overs. It was no, Woody, you're going to open the bowling this season and you're going to bowl at the end. And they stuck with that throughout the whole competition, through the good games and the bad games. And I think that then breeds confidence. So I owe massive dues to Corky and the way he backed, well, not only me, but those other guys that I've mentioned.
And you mentioned earlier that you actually then went on to win the T20 Blast in that 2010 season. Debut season, dream season, really.
Yeah, incredible. And it's that game that's often shown on TV where we actually should have lost the game. It was Somerset if they had run. I think Jimmy Adams was running with Dan Christian, who had pulled a hamstring or a calf. It's still quite vivid now, to be honest. And they both ended up at the wrong ends. And if Somerset run them out, then we wouldn't have won. But ultimately they didn't. And the music went off and we were crowned champions. But, I think the icing on the cake there, and I wish it happened, further down my career and the other ones we won, is that it was actually at the Rose Bowl at the time. So, or it moved to Edgbaston. So to win a trophy in your first year, finals day, to be in your home ground, you probably can't write a better script, to be honest.
Absolutely not. It's pretty special. And speaking of finals day drama, I was actually in the crowd at that 2022 final, potentially not supporting Hampshire, unfortunately. But I mean, that game, that was just pure drama. Can you transport us back to that day, that final over when Nathan Ellis was bowling? What were those emotions running through your body?
Oh, I think ultimately they started off, the emotions were, I was relatively calm because Nelly for that year had been absolutely sensational for us, and he's sort of gone on to be renowned as one of the best death bowlers in the world, and we got to see that firsthand in that season. So I was quite calm, and I'm not sure if he bowled a no ball throughout the whole campaign. So we talk about pressure and mindset and everything. I think pressure gets to the best of us in certain situations, but I always thought he was going to close it out, obviously, until he bowled the no ball, and we've taken that wicket and the guys are jumping around celebrating, the fireworks have gone off, and then we're all huddling and jumping around, and someone's like, oh no, look at the umpire, and the umpire stood there with his his arm out signaling no ball. And I remember having a stump in my hand, having run and got the stump, and I'm just in the hand, I just literally throw it halfway across the pitch. And I think I've then gone from he's going to close this out to it's just not our day. And then he bowled another great ball, which ultimately should have closed the game out. And then what happened then is just crazy. And I don't know what it is about Hampshire cricket and finals, and because the 3 out of the 5 trophies I've won have gone down to literally the last ball, which is crazy.
But as you say, you've gone on to win five trophies in total with Hampshire. You've seen great success with the team, both yourself and the squad, including winning the Blast, of course, the Royal London Cup, County Championship Division 2. What's been key to the success that the squad has seen over those years?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I think the hardest thing that sticks out there is just the one, championship title, and that being Div 2. As a young lad, and still to this day, I think I would give back a few of those T20 Blast trophies to win the championship. And I don't even play championship cricket anymore, because I think that's ultimately the one that everyone really wants to win. I think, well, when everybody not got moved on, but the transition changed when we were young, I think from that moment all the way through to this current day, 2026, going into the new season, I think we've always had a mixture of blend of senior players and young players. And I think that bodes nicely in the sense that you've got these 4, 5, 6 players in your team that have got the similar kind of attitude that I did back in the day, a little bit carefree, just go about their business, just love the game and want to play it. And then mixed in with some players that have had success, whether it's in the country or around the world, sort of guiding them along the way. You see a lot of T20 teams who have only got young players or have only got senior players that necessarily don't do so well. But I think that's one thing for, Hampshire, looking back over the years, is we've always had a decent split of, young people growing their game and senior players. And it seems to have, formulated in a winning formula, which has got us to an incredible amount of finals days over the years.
And you said that you would give some of those T20 trophies, you'd trade them for the championship victory. Why is that such a special victory to you?
I can't speak on young players' behalf now, but when I was growing up in championship cricket, from in the academy, we very much hardly ever hit white balls. It was all based around championship cricket, and then T20 cricket came second to that. I think the dynamics of that have changed slightly now, but from that young age, you're learning that forward defence, and you're learning how to bowl the ball at the top of off 6 times and over. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And not only that, but going on to play in 4-day games and win 4-day games. There's no satisfaction like it that I can remember, coming off the field, day 4 of a championship game, last couple of overs, and you pulled off a victory. I think it's just I think the length of the game and the amount it takes out of you, both physically and mentally, and you come off and you win that game, there's no feeling like it. I actually relate to it as, winning that same feeling as winning T20 trophies, winning finals. We just haven't managed to string enough wins together to come to win it. But we had a couple of good years 2 or 3 years ago. And with a new coach now, I think there'll be a big push over the next couple of years to try and do so.
Excellent. And now, of course, the Hampshire dressing room is made up of multiple different characters, as you say, young players, more experienced players. Didn't say senior, but obviously that's what makes the team is the range of people, the range of characteristics. So tell us more about what the Hampshire squad is like away from the field.
Yeah, well, I think it's changing, if I'm honest, with the direction of cricket. I was only thinking the other day, sort of 5-6 years ago, certainly this time of year in the winter, almost your whole squad would be around, right? And there was only a couple of people got these opportunities around the world. So I think the dynamics of cricket are changing. Over the winter here, any given period that I've been here and haven't been away, there's only been 4 or 5 players. So I think it's going away a little bit from, that 12 months a year you're in each other's pockets and you become the best of friends and everything like that. I think it is now becoming a bit more like a job. That's not to say we're not a tight-knit group, but because people are here, there, everywhere the whole time across the winter, you don't really have massive amounts of time to gel as a squad, get to know each other as well as you did 10 years ago, do all these things in the winter, like go hiking, go biking, or whatever these team events that you used to do. It's kind of individual prep now within yourself and the strength trainer and the physio and the bowling coach, batting coach, etc. And then you all come together April to start this season again. So dynamics are changing, but as a group that we've got right now, we've got a mix of characters, like you said, like I'm sure every dressing room has. We've got your likes of your Scott Currys, who are very reserved, don't give an awful much away. then you probably got you like some me at the other end of the spectrum, although I like to think that I've toned down a little bit from that mouthy little 18-year-old. But I always think dynamics of the dressing room is one of the most interesting things in professional sport. Ultimately, when teams win, it often goes back to, how are you as a group? Could you challenge each other? Could people take, criticism on the chin and move forward? And the teams that tend to do that the best and, get the best out of themselves on the field.
And now for those 6 months of the year that you are together, there's multiple coach journeys up and down the country, long coach journeys, may I add. Who are you sitting next to and who are you steering clear of?
Well, fortunately, I don't have to do too many coach journeys now because I don't play the 4-day cricket. So I only have to go to the south to play in the Blast. But I think that deep ingrained relationship that myself, Dorse and Vincey have now got, having played together since, 13, 14, over 20 years of being in each other's pockets. Not only we become sort of best mates, but yeah, we sit together around a table on the bus, often reminiscing because we're all currently, acutely aware that our careers are certainly towards the back end, and ultimately trying to keep up with the youngsters. What we were 15 years ago, the energy that they all bring now. Try and sap some of them from those young lads on those bus trips and try and stay relevant and young.
And how much do you value that relationship that you've got with Vincey and Dorse there, both on the pitch and away from the field?
Yeah, massively. We confide each other a lot around cricket, whether that's through good form or bad form. Obviously, Vincey's gone on to become a very established captain within the game in T20. So we're always, talking and trying to push each other on to, hopefully play as long as we can, but also keep performing and putting in match-winning performances for Hampshire. And then that just naturally, transpires across the game. Obviously, I don't see Vincey as much as I'd like to now because he's moved to Dubai for, I think, reasons that a lot of people will know. And then Dorse is 10 minutes up the road. So we spend an awful amount of time away from the game with each other. Our families are all good friends. And on top of that, which is probably the best thing, we've all got to see our kids grow up together. And, there's no better feeling than going through a journey with a couple of your best mates for such a long period of time.
Of course, love that. How nice. And now in the Hampshire squad then, obviously, we know some players, they just love talking cricket. So who are some of the biggest cricket badges?
Well, there was a period when Mason Crane was with us, so 2 seasons ago now, I used to call 3 of our players the oracles. Because they seem to know everything and anything about what's going on at every county, who was going where, and I'm going to name them. So one was obviously Mason, one was Scott, and one was Joe Weberley. They always see, whether they're in other teams' WhatsApp groups or what, I'm not sure, but they seem to get all the lowdown.
Great stuff. And are there any sort of younger players in the squad that you see yourself in or resonate with in a way that you found that you've sort of taken under your wing?
I wouldn't say taken under my wing as such, but I think the way Scott's come on in T20 cricket, we often speak a lot about, bowling, certainly at the deaf. And actually, he's teaching me things now, which is amazing to show how far he's come on in the last 2 or 3 years. I think one thing that I will praise certainly the young seamers on at Hampshire is their professionalism. Cricket is changing from when I was young. It was, professional sport, but away from the game, people had a good time and went out and drunk. But these guys are so focused now about, getting them maximising their career and going on to play for England. So their drive to, get better and learn is quite inspiring, actually, because, when I was younger, not a drinking culture, but, drinking was part of the game. But these guys are so professional about their training, their gym. They're giving themselves absolutely the best chance to go and do the best things in their career they can possible.
Excellent. And now looking at the 100 then, the other tournament we have here in the UK, starting your journey at the 100 with the London Spirit and then making the shift to Birmingham Phoenix more recently. How have you found the experience of the 100 to be overall?
Yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Jess. And I think, someone that's played all their cricket at Hampshire my whole life, to get that opportunity to go and, experience something different in terms of a competition, but also a different environment, originally at the Spirit and then more recently the Phoenix. It's also given me like a bit of a deeper appreciation for Hampshire, when I'm back there. Because when something's all you ever know, you always think that other things on the other side are going to be better. But yeah, when you go away from that environment and you're in a different one, you just, you appreciate things a little bit more. But as a tournament, it's been awesome, and I think that exposure in the last 3 or 4 years in the 100 is probably the reason why I've been able to go to a couple more franchise tournaments around the world. So I'm grateful for the 100, and it's a tournament I love.
And how did you find that shift between Spirit and Phoenix then? And how do you see that the two team dynamics differ?
Yeah, they were, very, very different. Some of that based around conditions. The years I was at Lords, the ball nipped around quite a lot, and tactics become maybe slightly away from the T20 game or the 100 game that we know and love about fours and sixes, and it came a little bit about can we get to 130 and you might win the game. Whereas Edgbaston, the wicket was always excellent. There's often a short boundary, but I absolutely thoroughly loved my last 2 years at the Phoenix. I've really enjoyed, Dan Vittori as a coach, and the way he, didn't try and invent the wheel in, 5 weeks. And I didn't try and rip your game up technically or etc. He just backed you for, what you can bring to the team, for the reason why they got you there, and ultimately got you in a position to, feel comfortable to go and perform. And I think we were incredibly close the year before last of winning it. We'd obviously lost the eliminator at the Oval, which was gutting, and we weren't quite so good last year. But as you know, there's the big auction next week, so who knows where we're going to land this year?
There is.
And
now
if at all.
Oh well, of course. Well, hopefully, we're hoping. Now, look, you play cricket all over the world, with the 100, of course, being the springboard for that, as you mentioned. Do you have a favourite place that you like going back and playing?
Yeah, I think my favourite 5 weeks in my, well, not necessarily in my career, but in my recent years have been when I was in South Africa this year for the SA20. I was actually quite taken back at how good that competition is. From an organisation point of view, from being lucky enough to be in the team that I was in, the travelling around, being able to see all of South Africa mixed in with the weather. I don't think there's a better spectacle in terms of a T20 competition in the world currently. I think 100 would come pretty close, but I guess being someone that's always been from England, I kind of knew what to expect with the 100. Whereas that competition they've got going on in South Africa is amazing, and I'd be very grateful if I got the opportunity to go back. And we were fortunate to go on and win it, which obviously always helps.
Of course, and I can completely second that. I was there recently as well, same comp, and it was just absolutely incredible. The place is incredible, as you say. The organisation of the comp, how it's run, it was amazing to see. But of course, you were playing for the Sunrisers, Eastern Cape, under experienced captain now Tristan Stubbs as well. Seeing how he was playing, and of course the whole squad as well. How was that for you?
It was incredible, and I'll never forget one of the first meetings we had as a squad. He addressed the rest of the team, and he sort of said, as captain, it's and as local South Africans, it's our duty to make sure these overseas players have the best 5 weeks of their life. And that went on to happen, and it's probably a little bit of coincidence in the way that we played our cricket, and obviously winning massively helps. But the way they were so hospitable to us guys. As an overseas player, you felt like you were, one of them from the word go. And I obviously knew their head coach, A.D. Bill, very well from his time at Hampshire. And, I didn't get the opportunity to play, but I felt as important as the number one player on the team sheet to, 18 or 19, whoever's in the squad. And for somebody that's, played a lot of cricket over the years, I've always tended to be in teams as opposed to, sitting on the side waiting to get an opportunity. And often when you are that person that's waiting to get an opportunity, you can get a little bit angsty, and you kind of not hoping people fail, but like you're always thinking like, how am I going to get my opportunity to show what I can do? I think that's a natural trait of anybody, but I didn't really get that feeling out there because I just felt so welcomed and so a part of something. I never got that feeling of, it'd be nice if he bowled rubbish today so I could play, which is exactly how it should be, which isn't always the case. But yeah, if I could go back, I think you could share me with this. It'd be awesome.
Oh, I've been thinking about it for the last 2 months that I've been home. I can't get enough of it, going through the camera roll every night before I go to bed. It was great. And now, look, of course, you mentioned that was a 5-week comp in itself, and playing multiple of those kind of comps throughout the year. You're playing on so many different surfaces, a variety of surfaces as well. How do you find that you condition yourself?
Yeah, it's tough when you're away from home, especially and you're living in hotels and you're not playing. I think the thing for me is my keeping my mind as fresh as possible. You're away from your family, you're not essentially playing, but you're in these amazing countries. Go and do something outside of cricket that's going to keep you fresh, as well as you're training within the environment to be able to make sure you're ready when you're playing. So that was something that I found interesting and different this year. Like I said, I've kind of been used to playing when I've been around teams. So yeah, it's always different experiences and absolutely loving it.
And what do you like to do outside of cricket just to get your mind away from it all?
Well, I wouldn't say I like to do it, but currently I'm doing a master's in leadership and sport.
Okay.
So that's taken up a lot of my time, although it's taken up a few more years than I was hoping to do it in. But slow and steady wins the race, hey. But I literally start another assignment tomorrow. But I just felt that, coming towards the end of my career, hopefully I'll play for a couple more years. Yeah, I just wanted to, put my mind to something else other than cricket, which is all I've ever known, to hopefully make that transition when it does come slightly easier than what it would be if I'd done absolutely nothing.
Excellent. And now playing in multiple different teams and franchises as well, you find that you're always meeting new players, but also you kind of see the same sort of people, as we know, around the world now. So do you have any players that you particularly look forward to playing either with or against?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think ultimately, yes. I was fortunate to experience golf giants in Dubai, both playing with Vinci and Dawson in that same competition. So that feeling of playing together as a three, but for a different team, I think that was a little, tick in the notepad to tick off at the end of the career. So not just play with them at Hampshire, but then also playing against players that play for Hampshire in different competitions. I always find that dynamic quite interesting, especially when we played against Vinci in the 100 for the first time. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I'm running up to my best mates who's normally stood at mid-off telling me what to bowl. But you're right, you come across similar characters in every tournament you go to now, which I think is both good and bad. It's good to, pick people's brains and understand how they play if you come against them next time. But the analytics in cricket is becoming slightly easier, maybe because of the amount of times these people are cropping up or you bowl against them. But yeah, it's I think for me it's just grateful for the opportunity to play outside of our own country, because 10 years ago that wasn't really a viable option.
And how do you keep that competitive spark alive when you are running into bowl against people like James Vince?
I think it's very much alive, but in a different way. You're obviously good mates, but at the end of the day, you're competitors, and you have that desire to win. And I actually remember getting him out the first year in the 100. I wasn't quite sure how to celebrate, because I think that would be taking it a bit too far. But, I think, the bragging rights away from the game, having played against each other, they all very much come alive in the banter. So I think that natural instinct to want to win just completely takes over, and it comes about you v him and you winning on that day.
Great stuff. And you mentioned your master's degree there, and of course I'm sure you've still got plenty of years left in the tank as well. But looking ahead to your future, the future of your career as well, what more do you have left that you want to achieve?
Well, outside of watching Hampshire, win the championship, I've always grateful when Hampshire get to finals, and the one that we won in 22 that you talked about, and every one before that, I've always said, if I'd love one more, I'd love one more. Now, I don't know how many times you can keep saying that, but I would love to win as many more trophies as I can over the next couple of years. I'm acutely aware that I've had lots of knee surgeries, and hopefully I play for 2 or 3 more years, but it's not going to go much beyond that. So I think the reason for doing the Masters is, along with up to my level 3 coaching badges, is I would love to stay in the game, and give back to what's been given to me, and coach. But there's only so many coaching positions for so many players who want that role. So I guess the reason why I did the Masters is to add some substance to that coaching role. And I think leadership at the minute, whether it's in sport, business, or whatever walk of life, is a little bit of a fad, if you want to call it that. But it just adds a little bit of meat to the bone to be a bit more desirable when coaching down the line.
Excellent. Now, just to finish off, and you can have a think about this, but do you have any word of advice to any young and aspiring pace bowlers out there?
Yeah, I think for me it'd be don't leave any stone unturned. The game is changing quickly, and there's an incredible amount of opportunities out there. But take as much advice on board as you can. And I think I alluded to those 3 lads at Hampshire now who have the professionalism in their game. I think cricket is certainly becoming like that. You need to be more professional than the next guy and be willing to learn more than the next guy. Willing to make sacrifices to get to where you want to get to. And that would probably be my advice.
Great stuff. Well, look, Woody, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today, and all the best for both the 100 draft coming up and, of course, the upcoming season as well.
Thanks, Jess. Nice to chat.